Welcome to KPI Fireside. Our mission is simple: to improve companies and to improve careers through continuous improvement. In every episode, we explore the spark, the moment, the mindset, or the method that ignites real change. Whether you're just starting out or leveling up, you'll find the insights and inspiration to fuel your next improvement. Welcome back to KPI Fireside. If you're just joining us, this is part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Gwendolyn Galsworth, a leading hands-on expert in visual thinking, visual operational conversions, visual management, and leadership. In part 1, Gwen shared the foundation of visuality, including the powerful questions of what do I need to know and what do I need to share. If you missed it, go back and check out episode 16. Today, we pick up right where we left off, with Gwen introducing us to Obeya Room. You'll hear how it started, why digital isn't always better, and what it really takes to lead through metrics that drive, not just monitor. Let's jump back in. So you mentioned the Toyota Prius. What I want to do, I want to build a little context to when an Obeya Room might be justified or warranted, or might be like, something that somebody want to implement. If I recall, what I remember about the story of the Toyota Prius was something like Toyota had a big goal of like build a car for the next century, or something along those lines. How would a company know, like, hey, this is a situation where you might think like Obeya Room might be something you should do? What kind of a situation might they find themselves in where it's, because it sounds like not a simple thing that you're going to do in a day, right? Like this is a commitment to a bigger problem.
Borders down in a day, and you don't make a machine speak in a day. You don't build a language of visuality in a day. So we're kind of mixing oranges and cabbage and bananas. The way that I would answer the question about when is that every organization would benefit from having a room where you have immediate line of sight of behavior. We are not at this moment going to talk about make it easy on yourself and make it digital, because that's a different conversation and probably for a different session. It's very important, and it's not, it's usually greatly misunderstood. But right now, I just want to take your plain question, which is I cannot think of a single organization that I've ever been in my long life in this field that wouldn't benefit from a Obeya Room. I'll say it another way, that wouldn't benefit from line of sight, to be able to see the metrics that drive your plant in one place. It's a no-brainer. It's
So an
not
Obeya Room is something that everybody should be considering.
the way borders and addresses are for the shop floor, the way visual displays are for supervisors, the way Hoshin is for executives. The Obeya is plant-wide. It can be done by department. It should be step down, but certainly the executives, the ranking side executive, should have line of sight. Yeah, you can do a Gemba walk and you can go by the stations of KPIs that are for this department, this work cell, this area, this function. But somewhere you need to have the sum up, and it is not a report. Because one of the things that you want from the Obeya Room, which is, again, there's a limited understanding of how valuable what I'm about to say is, but there's the beginning of understanding, and we can work with that. And that is you need to touch it. You need to say, hey, look at this over here, and look at that over there. These guys are connected. Now, you might know that when you're on the floor, but here you're having the evidence. You have pieces of your company that are talking to each other. Remember what we said at the beginning? You have the beginnings of the possibility of building a system, a dynamic system that talks to itself, like our body talks to itself, that has its internal integrity, its autonomy, its power, its functionality, its contribution, its life, its art, its breathing, its dynamic. You can have that in your plant.
You're touching on something that I feel very strongly about as well, and it's that need to touch it and to be tactile with the information. There's a story, maybe you'll recognize this, but it was from a book that I read that talked about, it might have been Detroit. It was one of these school systems where they were having real trouble with student performance, and they invested in digital tools and software and all these digital solutions to try to improve the students' scores. And they gave the teachers all of these reports. And then, none of these things that they had tried were working. And then somebody came up with a solution. I don't recall it being
They
presented as
pulled
an
the plug
Obeya
on the
Room,
electricity. They
but
just
they
pulled
what they did is they had the teachers come into this room, and the thing that I remember about the story specifically is that they were transposing the test score numbers from one thing to something on the wall. And the moral of the story that I got out of this, that it was that transposing of the numbers that the teachers went through that they felt, or they proved, or however they, told this story, was the difference in getting those students' scores to finally move. And it was that moment of thinking when they were forced to touch the data for each student, where they were, thereby thinking, okay, how can I help this one student? And it was just a really interesting insight for me. And it's a lesson that I've taken, the value of touching the data. And whatever, it might be a cut and paste in between spreadsheets or something, but there can be some value in touching
No, no,
the
no.
information.
No, 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 don't back off of it. There can't be some value. There is inestimable value, inestimable, almost untrackably powerful value in touching. It's called touch knowledge. It's the knowledge that you get when you shake someone's hand. If you had 3 hours to say what happened during that handshake, that might be enough to say, "What is it that I got? What is it that I know?" We haven't refined the sense, our sensibilities, or our language about saying, "What did I get from that handshake?" But we know it. Our system knows it. It's registered as a very vivid data point, if you want to call it, but it's knowable and it comes through touch knowledge. Research that has gone on with with fetuses, twin fetuses, and even though it can't be proved, it's a little fanciful. I really love this story. I love the story that you told as well, and I want to have a citation because because the marketing is saying to our wonderful CEOs who are in a way innocent but very open to marketing, especially on the golf course, invest in digital boards, and your performance will rise. And in fact, McKinsey did a study, it was 12 years ago, going to something like 200 companies. The study has disappeared off of the web, and they wanted to know to what extent was your investment in digital uh, impactful. And it was $5 billion worth of investment. And the best they could do was an average of 5% effective. Now, what that range was doubtlessly 0 to something, but it was 5% effective. In other words, digital did not make a contribution. It's handy, it's convenient, it's useful, but it is not a substitute. So this study with fetuses, which I kind of refer to when we get into this conversation, is that at 20 weeks, fetuses will make a movement predictably that looks as though they're reaching for each other, that looks as though the 20-week fetuses, the two of them, are reaching for this connection to touch, to touch. We have been investigating the senses for 100 years. The eye has been examined the most. It is the most researched of our senses. And you ask any neuroscientist, and they will say it is still the least understood. We do not understand how the eye informs the brain. We only know now that they're two separate organs, and we only know now that the involuntary part of our brain, which is 90% of its activity, that 50% of that 90% is dedicated to finding and interpreting visual data. So we know that visual is important. We know that it informs, it gives a sense of safety, it gives a sense of discovery, creativity. It's triggering, it's dominant. We don't understand it. It's one of the reasons why visuality is such a revolution when it comes into a plant, when it comes in comprehensively, because it satisfies our need to know on a level that is really organic with our body, which is the same as our body. It's very, very, very important. So so for me, you're singing to the choir here, Keith. I'm with you, and I need the research, and I get this all the time. This wonderful man spoke to me recently. His name was Andre, and he's part of a big corporation. He's an internal consultant, digital. They're doing agile, it's software development. And he says, "My boss wants to uh, invest in digital Obeya." And and he said, "What should I do?" I said, "Stop him. You have to stop him.
Talk some sense into him.
It's your job to organize the research and make the case and stop him, and at least ask him to do it experimentally and not whole hog, because it will not only defeat you, but it will set him back as well, and and will not look good on his own, vita, his own, rap sheet." So, we have to be careful of the marketing, because the people who are marketing are well-meaning, believe me, they're fanatics about their work, but it's not founded on, kind of balanced research. It has some research, but it doesn't say what all good research must say, is tell me about the opposite. Give me the data that proves or at least talks about the opposite. Let's be scientists about this. It's very, very important, and thank you very much for that story. I'm so, uh it's so juicy. Thank you.
I do wanna find that citation. I've actually been looking for it because I read the book and I went through some of them. I have a hunch of where it's at, but I just have not been able to find it.
Okay.
It's a great
We all
book.
want to know. Let us all
It could
know.
have been I'm gonna try to find this. It might have been a Chip and Dan Heath book about moments, potentially. That might have been the book.
Okay.
Um, okay,
Okay.
so I'm not sure how much you can talk about your current engagement with Obeya and the company, but if you can't talk specifically, maybe you could
I
orient us a
can.
little bit, maybe industry or like the type of problem. Is there like a big mission level objective that you're trying to help solve? What are maybe be as specific as you can about that current challenge as you
Well,
are
I'm
able.
working with 2 companies, on Obeya, and for me, it's very they're both very interesting, but I do need to neutralize it, because, in fact, I was looking forward to this interview because I wanna because I thought it was gonna be 100% on Obeya, trying to kind of build a case and find the language, and I wanna share it with them. So I have to be careful. But what we are talking about is effectiveness. We are talking there is not a resistance to the idea of Obeya. And in fact, it's used on a departmental level, and it's used on a site level. And in one particular company where we're just maybe beginning, we're at the discussion stages. There are 30 sites in Europe. So it's big and it's software development. So in a couple of their plants, in a couple of their sites, Obeya is already a part of the landscape, but they're not effective. I've been to those meetings, and they are either without focus or without outcome. Of course, they go hand in hand. So what we're talking about is, um, my coming in and taking them through a cycle that would be a leadership cycle
Mhm.
that had to do with using Obeya to lead. And, I remember a conversation that you and I had about 3 years ago when I think I was either going to Poland or there, but the the role of the executive is to decide and to drive. And when you take that orientation into an Obeya room, things get done. It isn't just data on the wall, it is opportunity on the wall, and it is accountability on the wall, and it is the behavior of the team interfacing with the wall physically and also touchingly. It is discovering It is discovery. The way that's summed up in my lexicon, it's a rather efficient way, I mentioned it before, is I say to the Obeya leader, you're responsible for what's next. You live in the world of tomorrow. It's called next. And if you don't know what's next, you need to discover it. If you don't know what's next, you need to know that you don't know and need to know that it's on the wall. And you have to find it. And you have to devise your meetings so they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at that end is a predicted end. And see how many times you win that end. And if you don't, you have to find out why. So I just want to add one more thing. In the world of this Obeya, the way that I teach it, and for me, it is candy. It's just so, um, it's so engrossing and enjoyable to be in an environment where people want to learn how to go deeper, wider, become more effective. So we're still dealing with numbers on the wall.
I like what you said about using this as, something that you can share with like a company. Like, what is Obeya?
To be effective at Obeya, someone does need to be in charge of that session. And someone needs to, at the end of the session, say, what have I got? What just happened? How can I take this and turn it into our next session? What's the direction? So that kind of decision making, or let's say that kind of planning, that kind of envisioning is 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 absolutely the responsibility of a person. If he wants to do it with 2 or 3 people, if she wants to do it with a team, it can be done and can be done very nicely, very nicely. But a lot of the sessions are begun with, what do you want? Talking to the group. What has to happen during this session? Or at the end of the session, this is time for I wants. That's the way we signal it. It's I want
The I
time.
wants.
What do you want to have happen by the next session? And the leader is wise to ask that because for sure people in that room have been dissatisfied. Ah, jeepers, we got so close and we didn't get there. The time between the sessions have to be used. It has to be used. In other words, Obeya, this is the shorthand for it. This is what I say to my friend in this company. I said, Obeya's got to be the most exciting thing that has happened to you all week. Obeya is the one meeting you won't be late for and the one meeting that you relish. Things happen there. And there's a million ways to do that, you know, because this is exactly what I do with CEOs and with also supervisors. So that people never meet their meetings. Oh, I've got wonderful stories to tell you, but there's something else on your agenda. So I just wanted to say that effectiveness has to do with discovery. It has to do with your understanding that there's a task to complete above the horizon, and under the horizon is the life that drives that. It's the effectiveness, the connections between people, the utilization of teaching with no answers, creating flow, talking amongst yourselves, checking for understanding, building community. All of those, all of those. I'll say one more thing, Keith, and to everybody. As with everything, and this kind of puts the cap on your first question, such a long time ago about what have I discovered about visuality? Visuality is about growing leaders. When I work on the leadership level, we grow leaders. When I work with Obeya, we're growing leaders. When I work with operators, we're growing leaders. They're self-leaders, but they are still in charge of their internal resource and they have a science about the way they utilize it. And it is creating this tremendous shift in identity.
So
So
this,
it's your turn.
yeah, this, I wanna build a little bit of context for this thing that we're calling Obeya. Are there some other terms that might be either similar or different or maybe even misinterpreted inside organizations? Like somebody might have a war room or a tier board or a huddle board or
I
something.
see.
Are
Scoreboard.
these things like, how would you help us build some language about recognizing these as maybe they're part of an Obeya strategy at a different level? Like, give
Oh,
us a
you know,
little.
it's an interesting question because what you're talking about is segmentations of the information that will be in the Obeya room. They're all part of, if you will, the nervous system of the plant.
Mhm,
You can think of the information around measurement data, things that we count, things that we trend, things that we plot as being part of the nervous system. And they are revelatory. They are illuminating.
mhm.
There's a direct connection, something you haven't mentioned yet, although you did in my language when you said scoreboard. It's what we call our problem-solving methodology. They are about the behavior of cause. It's called a measure. They they are about causality, and unless we shift the metrics, the war room, the huddle, the tier board into problem solving, we're just keeping track of the data. We're not really changing anything. We may be alarmed, we may be satisfied, but it's not active. It's not driving, it's monitoring. That's the big difference between metrics. Metrics that monitor, metrics that drive. It doesn't matter whether you put metrics that monitor on a rotating a
Mhm.
column with lights and on wheels, and you take it to lunch every day. It's still monitoring, sexy as it may be, if I'm allowed to say that word. Mm?
Could you give me an example of a metric that monitors versus maybe a better metric that drives?
Okay, so metrics that monitors are almost all the KPIs you'll ever see in your life.
Mhm.
They just tell you. They tell you, uh, drive slow, children playing, danger, 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 not good enough. We did it again. Monitor. That's monitoring. Not a call to action, just sadness or celebration, right?
So, like
That's
a
what,
stoplight, red, yellow, green, like you did or you didn't achieve your goal this week,
yeah, I mean,
maybe.
red, yellow, green bumps it up a level because it gives you a summation. I don't even wanna talk about it because it's such a low level, it's
Mhm.
still monitoring.
Yeah.
The right What
So
has to happen with the monitoring is it has to drive problem solving. So that's what I'm sorry, I'm mixing up the words, I don't wanna do that. Metrics that monitor can, should, in my book, should, must trigger problem solving, okay? Metrics that drive have a specific horizon, and the metric itself reveals cause. The metric itself reveals cause, and that's all I'm gonna say about it today, 'cause I want you to invite me back, and
save
this one is
something
really
for our
juicy.
next call.
This one is really juicy.
There's some really good stuff there.
Well, I've been talking about this since the 1980s. I make a lot of noise about metrics that drive because I think they're gorgeous. I've done it in a pharma plant, I've done it in a steel plant, I've done it in an aerospace plant. It works like crazy. And, it's just one of those things for some reason, people go, oh, hum. I think it's because these are so highly marketed that people don't make the switch. But metrics that drive make metrics that monitor go away because you solve the problems that these metrics are tracking.
C uh, can I
You
give
have
you an
to
example of how I think I'm interpreting
Yeah.
that? So,
Yeah, 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 I'd love to
let's
hear
say
you.
I'm managing a call center or something, and I'm like, "Okay, last week we had 200 calls," or something. That's a metric that monitors. Let's say I'm working on a sales floor and I show up in the morning and I say, I have 7 new leads today to call. Like the one of them is kind of like tipping me forward, like, here's 7 things you need to do. Whereas one of them is, like just a summation of what happened.
No, that's not the difference that I make, but what you just did is very useful. So you're making it more specific and more actionable, and you're making it more discreet. You're taking the 200 calls into these 7 things I did. You're making it more action-oriented. A metric that drives contain is a segmentation of that metric. It answers the question, "What's in the dot?" What's in the dot? Similar to what you're saying, if you took those 200 calls and segmented them and figured out some way to differentiate them and to then to pull out a piece and do a kind of Pareto on what's left and drive into some segmentation of that. Can you do that in your imagination? That's easy for you, right?
Yeah, so as a leader, I have a little thing that I like to do called the daily number. And basically, I like to assign everybody on my teams at least one number per day that they're responsible for. And kind of the visual that I have in
Lovely.
mind is this number that I ask them to pull is almost like somebody tipping them forward to something that they need to do. So maybe let me take my analogy and shift it a little bit. Let's say I'm, call center again, and maybe I have a customer satisfaction number that says we're at 4.5 stars out of 5. That's a metric that monitors.
Tell me what we're
Whereas
looking for now. Are you still trying to devise what I mean, or are you going into
I'm
your own
I'm
riff?
trying to shift my frame of mind from here's a metric that monitors versus here's a metric that drives. So maybe a metric that drives would be something that says show me, or how many of these had less than 5 stars or something, where it's kind of pointing me towards a cause or something that needs to be done or an issue to be fixed.
Yeah, you're completely on the right track.
So, Gwen, I feel like we've got the cart before the horse a little bit. We're getting a little far down the path. I want to come back to a level where, I'm picturing in my head this thing of visuality, and I want to like kind of understand these container pieces because there's a lot to know here. Obviously, we can't get to it all in a 1 or 2 hour conversation, but could you help give us just some labels to put on these different boxes? I'm kind of picturing something in my head that is like a grid with some number of boxes. In your head, I think you've got a very clear picture. Help us understand. Is it 5? Is it 10? How many boxes are there in this picture?
Yes. Well, that image is one that has appeared to you as a mirage every time you read my books or listen to another podcast. It's called The 10 Doorways, and it's the segmentation of the language. So what I'm going to give you is some terms and some categories of visual function that are broad, okay? There are 10 of them. They're called the 10 doorways, and they are the 10 doorways into the visual workplace. You can open any of them and enter the visual workplace. They are dependent on 2 things: the operational function, like machine, office, organizational level, like supervisors, operators, like that, and a methodology that matches them.
Mhm.
Okay, so 2 parts. Methodology, people who do it. The first doorway of the 10 doorways is operator, value add associate, the folks who touch and do the actual work that is either provided to the um, customer either as a product or service. It could be customer service bank, a bank of customer service representatives, GoDaddy representatives that you find on the phone can be like that, service oriented. It can be product, could be a software product, could be steel, could be an airplane, could be a Merlin engine. Okay. Operators touch labor. Their category of function is the visual where, an elevated form of 5S, what I call work that makes sense. Bringing engineering principles, bringing building blocks of thinking, such as motion, value field, information deficits. Okay, there are 8 of those, to the physical workplace of operations where we make the product or serve the customer or get the service ready for the customer. That's doorway number 1. Doorway number 2 is about standards, standards that are visual. This is the domain of managers, engineers, and supervisors. They're responsible for creating and publishing clear, doable, sensible standards of operations, and we make them visual. Operators participate them in this, and they often do much of the legwork in creating standards. But the people who are responsible are supervisors, managers, engineers. Okay. Doorway number 3 is for visual displays. For supervisors, managers, engineers, fine, to capture what's eating their lunch, to get it on a display and get it addressed. Okay, so these are visual displays. They begin as whiteboards, but they evolve into very robust, complete displays. This is where Fritz, whom I mentioned, created this great visual display for running his meeting because that was eating his lunch. He was failing, and he solved it visually, and he became a hero. He really did. Another story, another time. Doorway number 4 is the executive doorway. And in that doorway, for executives and their direct reports, which are managers and then supervisors, so there's a whole chain here. The categories of visual function, the visual methods, have to do with, and in this order, measures at the bottom, problem solving, and Hoshin. We have something called the Operation Systems Improvement Template, which is a kind of vision, mission, strategy, but it goes down into levels of principles and macrometrics and also your 5 or 6 systems. So this is to look, it's a kind of operational blueprint for the organization. And we connect it to the X type and we complete it with the war room. Obeya is in that. One of the messages that I like to convey about putting problem solving and metrics into the executive doorway is that the executive is responsible for those outcomes. He may really induce and encourage, and make for a lot of participation, but ultimately the buck stops with him. This is the executive function. The 5th doorway is pull systems, very adequately taken care of by Lean. Pull systems, it's also about material consumption, which is a very important visual uh, function. Uh, the consumption and replenishment of material. It's where Kanban is, et cetera, et cetera. So doorway, that's 5. 6 is, going to the second row, 6 is the Pokeyoke doorway, visual guarantees, owned by the quality function and quality technicians. Of course, with the help of operators, of course, with the help of supervisors and managers and engineers. All of this is all of visuality is meant to connect various functions so that we help each other. But the people who are responsible for a good Pokeyoke system, if you will, a good quality management system, is your quality function. Okay? Has corporate leaders, of course. Doorway numbers, these are the 6 basic doorways. Work that makes sense, visual standards, visual displays, measured problem-solving Hoshin, pull systems, and visual guarantees. We take those 6, we apply them to doorway number 7. Doorway number 7 is the office, what I call the visual lean office. Okay? So we take those categories of visual function, we apply them to the office, and we make the office high-performing. The 8th doorway is the machine. The machine. It's called the visual machine. We take those 6 doorways, we apply them to the machine, a different venue. Doorway number 9 is for the macro environment. The macro environment means the environment that exists that is not directly connected to those doorways. What exists for the operator beyond the operator's area? There's material handling, there's the machine. It's the whole environment. And the purpose of that doorway is to create linkages between the departments, between the function,
Mhm.
so that there are visual linkages, visual conversations that are happening between assembly and material handling, between assembly, material handling, and the visual machine. Do you see? So people are creating a visual workplace within their workplace. Someone has to look at the macro environment. That doorway number 9 in a plant that is new to operational excellence will be about linkages, but it will morph into your OPEX function,
Mm.
your OPEX function. Okay, your um, a line of sight responsible for the strategic improvement of the plant,
Mhm.
where your tier boards come from and those other connections, the other connections. So we're talking really about a holistic um, uh, model. The 10th doorway is for enterprise integration, and that is to create visual languaging within multiple sites across 400 or across 5, so that the sites can talk to each other. Each has their own visual improvement language, but there are best practices that are
Mhm.
shared. When we get to that level, to doorway number 10, people already know visuality language, and we're now talking about the principles of visuality, and the assessment is on the principle level. We are looking for this kind of functionality in your plant. We're looking for the supervisor visual functionality. We're looking for operator visual functionality, leader, executive leader. Okay, so it's a way of integrating the plants. And it's a different process, but it's very unifying. So those are the categories of visual function, those 10. They're very rich. A company that opens 5 of those doorways is world class.
Mm.
Any 5, they're gonna be world class. They're going to be best in class when they open 6.
Mm.
In other words, there's powerful transformation coming out of that. 3 doorways will get you a shingle site visit. 4 doorways will get you bronze. So visuality is a language, and it is a language that can function in the absence of agile and in the absence of lean. Think of the relationship between lean and visuality as 2 wings of a bird. One wing is about time, and I'm not gonna talk about agile because that's a little bit of a detour, but the agile folks will be able to make,
Mhm.
the connection. One wing is about time. That's the wing of the bird. That's about lean. It's about the critical path, and it's about pull. I'm not talking about the lean that is the alphabet soup of everything you can think of thrown into a pot that has the label lean. I'm talking about a discrete intervention, predetermined and preformed. Do this, and you will have pull. The other wing is about information. Information is not addressed as a quantum in lean. It is used, but we are not looking at the informational landscape in lean. We're looking at the path through which the value stream through which your product flows. Long before uh, John Shook brought over the manual from Toyota, the secret manual that he found, he said, in a trash can.
Secret
That
man.
was lucky. He said, "I found it in a trash can. I picked it out of the trash can and brought it home, published it." Thank you, John. I'm so glad you did, because now we have the name of value stream. How valuable was that? It was revolutionary. So we're very grateful. Um, that is the world of lean. But the bird needs two wings, and the informational landscape is the domain of visuality. It is there to create a language that obliterates information deficits. Its enemy is invisible and can be found because we trace its footprint called motion, moving without working, struggle, counting, motion, counting again, double motion. That you have to count it all is already an information deficit. Okay. So there's some really clever ways to get around counting. Mhm. Rework, not the work itself, but the rework. So two wings of the bird, and the bird, when you go to the bird and say, "Hey, birdie, which wing is more important?" The bird will look at you cross-eyed and show you by flying away. While flying away, it flies away. You decide. Pom, 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 pom. Okay? It's such a tight partnership, but they are discrete. And when you begin with visual, you get a transformation of the work culture. Why? Because you are introducing a robust language of connection, of precision, of accountability, of contribution. Lean comes in, it's a piece of cake because people are already internally flexible and they've grown into self-leaders and leaders. Okay, so I love starting with visuality. I almost never go in if the plant is already lean
Mm,
because, and then you get into arguments. It turned out right when we did it with Lockheed Martin, but that's another story. But that was why they won the Joint Strike Fighter in 2001 because they got visual.
mm.
There's no question about it. They invited Boeing called me and said, "Hey, can you get us into Lockheed? I hear you're working." Are you kidding? You're competing for the same $250 billion contract. But I called, Mark Swisher and I said, "Hey, Mark." He said, "Sure, have him come down." Can they take pictures? Well, pictures, maybe not. They came down and the guys from Boeing said, "Oh god, we're cooked. Oh god. Oh god." Everything was so painful because they were so far ahead, just exquisite. They were cowboys. Love those cowboys from Texas. And they did marvelous work, and they already live the I. It's one of the wonderful things, the contradictions or the paradoxes in Texas, in my country, is you have tremendous individuals who will want to be themselves and no one else. Don't mess with Texas. Don't mess with a Texan. So, we did that was just extraordinary work there, just extraordinary ownership. So those are the 10 doorways, and now I wanna say one more thing. It was a great question, perhaps I'm going on a bit, but I think it is giving people a good understanding of this segmentation.
Mhm.
There's there are 2 words that we didn't mention yet: visual management. Visual management is 10% of the visual spectrum. I just named the other 90%. Visual management is about managing all of those things, getting metrics
Mm,
on all of those doorways to give you line of sight across the corporation, across the enterprise of effort, the community of effort we call the company. But it is there to manage. And the confusion, and I don't blame anybody. I understand, but I'm a little bit if I had a spark, if I you were talking about sparks and you were to
yeah.
say to me, "What was the spark that got you involved with visual management?" I would say it was the misuse of the term. It made me completely nuts because finally, Jim and, Jim Womack and Dan, Jones said, "Start with 5S," and I said, "Finally, they're waking up to visuality," but no. I sent I sent Jim Womack piles of my work back in 1992, 93, saying, "Oh my god, now you're ready for this." And and he said, "Send me your stuff." And I sent it and didn't hear anything. It was like in January, didn't hear anything in March, April. Finally, in May, I called up and I talked to the lady. I said, "I sent Jim this material like 3 or 4 months ago. I haven't heard anything." I shouldn't tell the story. It's awful. And she said, "Well, let me look around. I don't see it. I'll get back to you." She calls me back 2 days later. She said, "I found it. I found it. Whole pile of stuff. But I'm sorry to say it has a little note on top, and the note says irrelevant." And I said, "Damn." Oh, yeah. So the lean guys don't have an understanding. They haven't done 4 decades of hands-on research in the field, failing at the beginning, but then success after success, and developing this field, codifying a field that had been unnamed, that had been unnamed. And, uh, and so they don't know the value of visuality. I I had somebody at the Shingo, a high-ranking member of the Shingo Prize, saying, "Tell me about your work in visualization. Isn't the imagination wonderful? You know, I failed art therapy." And I thought, "Oh, no. Oh, God. I don't know how to get myself out of this conversation." This was a high-ranking member of the Shingo Prize. I don't fault them, but I do say, now that you know that there's something else to learn, please learn it.
Yeah.
So we can have a conversation because this is important. So visual management is 10%. They called it visual management because they don't understand about making the workplace speak. They do understand giving managers line of sight. And so visual management is overpopulated with metrics and huddle boards and tier boards. Are they important? Of course they are. They're indispensable. But so is visual machine, yoke, work that makes sense, borders and
Mhm.
addresses, uh, visual mini systems, all of that stuff. So what we're looking for is more comprehensive knowledge and a little bit more modesty in learning. I need to learn modesty, but about other things, about other things. I I've got a good brain and I like using it, and I believe in respect, but I believe in learning as well, in discovery. Do you know, can I say one more thing just to put cherry on
Certainly.
this cake? The word management, I used to be a Latin teacher, which we talked about once. The word management comes from a Latin word, manos, which is hand, and agere. That's the Latin pronunciation, the way Caesar pronounced it. Agere, which means to make or to do.
Mm.
Management. It came into the French as ménager. It came into the Italian as menagiere, something like that. And it meant to train horses
Mm.
because you have to handle horses. It came into English and it meant handle people. But its roots are handle horses. That's why sometimes we think a little heavy handed there.
Mm.
Lighter touch would work a little better. We're not a horse, you know. I'm not a pack animal. I'm not an animal. I'm a human. I am you. My favorite definition of culture. So this will be my last thing, my last little quotable. Culture is who I think I am and who I think you are. A transformed culture is when I know that I am you.
That's a very deep thought.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's deep, but it's what I see. I see the parody. The parody, becomes palpable. The parody between us is no longer a conversation. It's not a bone of contention. You do different work, I do different work. We're powered within.
So, Gwen, I appreciate you sharing those 10 doorways. It sounds to me like there's a lot in this, whatever word a layperson not familiar with the 10 doorways and all of this um,
Newbie, yeah.
visual workplace, visual management, all the elements. It sounds like the 10 doorways is something that's very approachable for a lot of people inside of an organization, whether you're the CEO, whether you're a general manager, whether you're a VP of quality, whether you're an operator, a supervisor, a manager. It sounds like one of those doorways can get you
You
in,
notice? This is it. You're
That's
gonna learn all about it.
that's
Book
the
on
manual. Yeah, I got that one
yeah.
right.
It's all in there, the 10 doorways.
Yeah.
It's a great book.
And there's a lot here that folks can learn. You can increase your vocabulary of visuality. Gwen's books do have some really amazing pictures. I can't imagine the size of the graphics file that you have to have for that book because you've got so many pictures. It probably is not cheap to print either because it's all filled with color photos. It's a great,
Mhm.
great book, and I think it's a good um, probably history of a lot of your work, I'm assuming, a lot of the stuff that you've done.
700 pictures in this one, 700 in images, and 300 in this one. Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
visuality, yeah.
And I think that, some of my favorite, I guess, takeaways that I hope that listeners would pick up on is that obviously there's a huge amount of benefit and simplification and business and personal value in this visual workplace, and that this concept of making things easier to understand, comprehend through visuality is
To do the right
it's a
thing,
very
to do the
deep
right thing.
subject. There's a lot that people can dive into. Obviously, you've got your books, you've got your podcast. I'm curious
Mhm,
if you want to maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing next, what kind of things we can look forward to, if there's
mhm,
places that people can
mhm,
find you. I know you've been doing some events and
yeah,
some things like that. You've talked about some books, but what are some of your passions and where are you
thank
going next?
thank you. Um, so let me just order the questions that you the kind of work that I do is on-site. I love to do public seminars, which are about the 10 doorways to introduce people to the model. Takes a little bit longer than this podcast, but
Sure.
not that much longer. Um, if you I'm very interested in doing the same, uh, 10 doorway briefing on site. So I just wanna let you know, if you're interested in this, you just have to send us an email, we'll schedule something, and you will get the introduction. We will do a site assessment of your plant or your office, whatever your workplace is, and, we will talk about the fit. So that's usually takes about 2 days. Public seminars are usually 1 day, they don't have an assessment. If they do, we need more time, so it's a day and a half, 2 days. Um, I'm currently writing 3 books. Uh, the one I really love is called, Your Obeya. It's actually called My Obeya, but I think we're gonna change that to Your Obeya, Powered by Visual Thinking. And it's about effectiveness. It's about utilizing above the horizon tasks for your Obeya so that you get the content there on the walls, and below the horizon tasks, the people part, the thinking part, the discovery part. We teach those skills, and the book will be about that. I think that book will be about another year in coming because of the 2 projects I'm doing, one of them in the Netherlands, and I wanna wait until that cycle is kind of like a double proof, see if there's something new because the European mind is very different. It's much more, the American mind is so interesting, and I've had it for a number of years. I know it very well, and I live within that. I have a judge living down the street. She has Whippet, the doggy, and, she's always telling me about my mind and how
Yeah.
different it is from the Europeans. And she doesn't know that she's insulting me, but that's the way it is with Europeans. They insult me all the time, and they think that they're just trying to correct me and help me with my life, and, I'll rip their throats out. No, no, I really like her, I really like her, but she tests me from time to time. She's a really important judge. She's really smart, smart, smart. Um, so that'll be one book on, the eye of the leader, meaning the I, the
Mhm.
individual of the leader, uh, the principles and practices of visual leadership. And the third book will be actually, there's 4, but I think I'm going to combine visual displays and scoreboarding. I really, really want to get the scoreboarding. That's a problem solving methodology It's just fabulous. So, those are the projects right now. I am very interested in teaching consulting firms, and I just say this to anyone who's listening. If you have a consulting firm and you wanna learn about visuality, drop us a line and we will start to make arrangements. That has become my biggest kind of burning platform
Mhm.
where I want consultants. I'm tired of waiting for the consultants to find on their own what visuality is. There'll be some of them who will be part of this, a part of your listeners, and I really want to do that. I did it in Warsaw. I'm going to do it in Ireland. We have methodologies for it, and all of our methodologies are scripted and ready. We've got 9 methodologies that match the doorways, and, you can build a whole new practice area and help the companies in the world and the people who work there through visuality. It's tremendous. It's tremendous. I'm so grateful for this. I am grateful for the time that you are willing to be in conversation. It's been really wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I
Yeah. Uh,
appreciate your attentiveness.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to just hear from you, and the stories and just the lessons that you've learned. I think are so wonderful, and again, for anybody listening, I definitely recommend the books. And it sounds like there's some opportunities for perhaps consultants that want to get skilled on this methodology and apply it inside of their practice. And Gwen, I would absolutely love to have you back another time and have some more conversations. There's just so much interesting stuff here, because I think, as humans, as individuals, we all spend so much of our time at work. It's a big part of life for all of us.
Mm,
And I think that, one thing that I find as part of my own personal mission, I guess you could say, is that it's sad for me to see so many people who hate work or don't like work or disengage
mm,
with work and don't see work
mm,
as something that
mm,
is an
mm,
opportunity to
mm.
think, to exercise
Discovered.
their brain, to
Oh,
practice.
yeah. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that when we have conversations, I know that you feel the same way about firing
I
people
do.
up from just that spark, that fire within, the eye, all that good
Volcano.
stuff. I think that's a great message for us to share and to communicate to the listeners, and just to let people know that, hey, that there is a better way. There is something that you can do. You can solve this problem. And when you do solve that problem for yourself and for others, it feels good, and it like kind of fires you up to keep going. And it's part of what makes life fun and exciting, and worth doing. So hopefully you can find that passion.
Keith, I have to add 2 things to that, or just to amplify it. One is that we are built for this. We are built to discover. Our brain function is such. There's this is a recurrency in my work that you hear me say, "The mind is a pattern-seeking mechanism." Once the mind finds that pattern, for example, when we lay down borders, if we lay down borders, and the formula is for everything that casts a shadow. So if in your work area, we're not talking offices now, there are parallels, but I want to give it vividly here. When we lay down borders for everything that casts a shadow, which is the rule, that's the
Mhm.
way you do it. That's the completeness. We lay down the pattern of work. And once, for example, we'll just take operators because their work is so concrete that they exemplify what's possible on all other levels. When you lay down the pattern of work, when the operator lays down their pattern of work, they go, "Oh, I get it. I get the flow. I get where it's blocked. I get why I have difficulty here. I get it." And we automatically, once we accept that, take it to the next level. We say, I got to I got to make the adjustment here. I got to make the adjustment there. And we create the next pattern of work. That's one of the reasons why we always know how to remove borders before we lay them down so we can take them up overnight. That's a requirement. They have to last for 12 months. They have to be removable in 24 hours.
Mm.
So you can change your mind. You get the next, and then you see the next level of pattern. Same operator says, "Oh God, I get it now." And we'll work it 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 2, and say, "Gotta change it." We got it. And that happens automatically. And that pattern seeking mechanism is why we have the stepwide improvement continuum. Because once we get it down and we see it physically in action, or if you will, through your work, through your writing, through your services, you see it in action, we see the changes that are necessary. But for some reason, and this one I haven't solved yet, I don't have any research on it, we have to see it before we can change it. We have to do that prototype. And and you once you get into that habit, executives who are listening, you don't have to transform your place. It's been transformed and it'll continue because the thinking has changed. People have learned how to think. That's what Ono said, isn't it? He said, people don't come to Toyota to work. They come to think.
Come to think.
That was his emblem. They come to think. That's what I want. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again so much, Gwen. Until we get a chance to talk again, be
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And yeah, so grateful for having you join us. Thanks so much.
Ditto 10 times. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.